Second round playoff series are finally starting to get set. We're getting an idea of who's playing who and who we think is moving on. The East is all set. And so in today's video, I'm going to give my 3 biggest questions for the Knicks versus Celtics second round series. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Court Vision. I know it's been a little while. Been a little busy with finals week coming up next week. You know, a lot of games to watch. Been struggling to keep up, but we're back. And in today's video, like I said, I'm going to give 3 questions for the Knicks versus Celtics second round series. And I'm going to do one of these videos, 3 questions for every of the 4 second round series. So without further ado, let's jump into it. First question, just to get it out of the way, it's the obligatory. How are Boston's top 3 guys going to look? Some injuries to Jaylen Brown before the playoffs started. Seems okay. You know, that wrist injury that Tatum had in round 1 against the Magic seems okay. Not an injury concern, but just a form concern. How is Kristaps Porzingis going to look? As for Tatum, yeah, I mean, he'll probably be fine. He looked kind of rough in game 1 of that last series versus the Magic. He was taking a lot of tough turnarounds, you know, missing on some clear outs against smaller defenders, shots you'd expect him to make. And then he missed game 2. He had that wrist injury, but it doesn't seem to be bothering him anymore. In game 5, he had 35, 8, and 10 assists. So wrist didn't seem to be bothering him at all. In that round 1 series, he averaged 31, 11, and 5. I don't really have any concerns for him, but maybe just something to watch. Maybe you got to watch his 3-point shot. He was 8 for 28 over those first 3 games that he played in the series, games 1, 3, and 4. But then in game 5, he was 4 for 5, so he'll probably be fine. You know, I'm not super concerned about him. When it comes to Jaylen Brown, again, he'll probably be fine, but there was some games in that round 1 series where he had some pretty brutal efficiency, but it's kind of par for the course with Jaylen Brown. He has some rough shooting nights sometimes. But the one concern that might be very legit with Jaylen Brown is his 3-point shooting. He was really super low volume in that series, except for that game 2 without Tatum when he was 5 for 7, but that was an outlier compared to the rest of the series. Outside of that, he only took 11 threes, made 3 of them. He didn't have a single make in game 1 or in game 4, and he was only shooting 3.6 a game in that series. Part of the volume problem could just be how well Orlando was taking away the 3-point line for the Celtics. But, I mean, if the Knicks take some notes defensively from what Orlando was doing, maybe it'll be something to watch. My real concern is for Kristaps Porzingis. He was really brutal in round 1, kind of just across the board. He was averaging 12 and 6 on 35% from the field and below 12% from 3, which is comically bad. He didn't make a 3 in 4 out of the 5 games, and he was only attempting 3.4 threes a game, which he averaged 6 on the season, only averaged 11 field goal attempts a game compared to his season average of about 14. Later on in the series, he was playing bad enough that his minutes were dropping. Like, he was getting less run than like Luke Cornett and Al Horford. He had 22 minutes in game 4, 21 minutes in game 5. Something that's a little confusing even is that in 3 of those 5 games, he had less than 10 points, but then in 2 of those games, including the one without Tatum, he had 19 or 20. That game without Tatum was his best game that he had, but even then his efficiency was really bad. He was 5 for 14 in that game and 0 for 5 from 3. I don't know, it's just some really confusingly bad form from him. You gotta hope that he's gonna figure it out in round 2, but that'll definitely be something to watch going forward, especially as you move past a round 2 series into a potential conference finals with a team like Cleveland, who has that double big lineup. Second question I've got for this series is, well, what does Boston do defensively with Cat? Specifically, how do they defend him, you know, with Josh Hart on the floor or in a double big look with Mitch? So the last time these 2 teams played, Kristaps was on Cat, you know, standard kind of coverages. You got to wonder how willing Boston is going to be to have in the starting lineup for both teams, have Tatum on Karl Anthony Towns with Kristaps roaming away from Josh Hart. They've been willing to do similar stuff like that in the past with Tatum guarding the center, and the Pistons had a little bit of success in that round 1 series against the Knicks with Jalen Duren guarding Josh Hart and Tobias Harris on Cat. Kind of depends how it goes. They'll probably start with KP on Cat, I would imagine, and then they'll make that adjustment if the defensive coverages look bad or maybe just to show a different look later on in the series. So we'll see how Joe Mazzulla decides to play that going forward. The double big actually is where it gets a little more interesting for me because in the regular season matchups that these teams had, New York didn't play the double big at all. In fact, they didn't play the double big at all until the postseason started. In that potential lineup, Kristaps on Mitch makes the most sense. Allow him to play his drop more often, be more of a roamer off of Mitch, who's a non-shooter, and then Tatum would guard Cat, which I think he's perfectly capable of doing. But I think Joe Mazzulla might also just run his own double big. He was doing that a lot, changing up the rotation a lot in terms of the big men in round one, and then a little bit at the end of the regular season as well. We saw some KP and Al Horford lineups, or some Luke Cornett and Al Horford lineups, and something like that. Luke Cornett on Mitch with KP or Al Horford on Cat would make some sense, or even the other way around with KP on Mitch so he can play that drop with Cornett on Cat potentially. Could make sense. Really depends on how willing the Celtics are to give that run to Luke Cornett as we get deeper and deeper into the postseason against a better team like New York. The Magic weren't going to pose as much of a threat offensively, so Luke Cornett wasn't as much of a liability. If KP keeps playing bad, though, they might have to be giving him those minutes. So it's definitely going to be a huge narrative to watch in this series. And like I said before, if Boston ends up winning this series, KP's form and the five-man rotation that they play against a team like Cleveland is going to be a huge, huge part of that series. And then my third question is, can we get anything out of the Knicks bench, right? Like the Celtics bench, they've got Peyton Pritchard, Sennheiser, Al Horford, Luke Cornett, whatever. But the Knicks bench has been pretty bad, and we all know how Tibbs plays his bench guys, which is not very much at all. Deuce McBride had a really bad round one, 3.8 points a game on 27% from the field in 16 minutes. In that series against Detroit, it was pretty uncharacteristically bad. He's normally a little better than that, but still pretty unacceptable for the guy who's supposed to be the first guy off the bench for New York. In this series, he'll go out there and play hard defense on whoever he's matched up, whether it's like Derek White, Peyton Pritchard, Drew Holiday, whatever. But if he's just out there playing hard defense and his offense isn't really rocking, he's not going to be able to stay on the floor. And that's going to be a problem for New York because they need someone off the bench. I think Mitchell Robinson will absolutely get his minutes because if nothing else, Cat can't play 48 minutes a game for a full series. Tibbs hates Precious Achiuwa, so he's not going to get minutes. Mitch as a pick and roll partner for Brunson, or with a bench guard, picking on Cornett or Al Horford in their bench minutes, in pick and roll actions, stuff like that, will be good. His defense is really good, especially defending pick and roll and stuff. Boston doesn't run a ton of it, but something to look for. His rebounding is obviously pretty big. He'll get his minutes regardless of what happens, but we're going to see whether it's, limited backup minutes or if he gets to really feature more in the double big lineup with Cat. In terms of campaign, he got a little bit of tick in round one. Not a ton at all, though. He was just under 9 minutes a game in that series. In that game one, he obviously had that huge run in the fourth quarter, when the Pistons collapsed and the Knicks went on that 21-0 run. Campaign had 14 points in 15 minutes. So if he's going to play at all in this series, it's going to be in that kind of role as a spark plug scorer or whatever, with Brunson on the bench, or as an initiator with Brunson on the bench. But knowing Tibbs and how he plays his guys, it's very possible he doesn't see the floor at all in a lot of these games in this series. And for the last two guys on the Knicks bench, Landry Shamet and Precious Achiuwa, these guys are not playing. Tibbs hates Precious Achiuwa. He didn't play at all in round one. Landry Shamet got like a minute a game, if that. Neither of these guys are really going to see the floor at all. Maybe Precious gets out there a little bit in limited minutes against like a Al Horford, Luke Cornett bench lineup just to match the size, but it'll be spot minutes at best. At the end of the day, if New York wants any chance to be competitive in this series, we're going to need a lot more out of Deuce McBride. Campaign will have to give, a couple stretches where he's a good scorer, hits some threes. I think Mitch will do his thing, but definitely going to be something to watch as we go forward throughout that series. All right, and those are my three questions for the Knicks-Celtics Round 2 series. Next up, I'll probably talk about Oklahoma City versus Minnesota. That's another great second-round series. Yeah, that's all I've got. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next one.